Alan Miller rubbed his tired eyes and checked his watch. It was just past 3 a.m. and the observatory was silent except for the gentle hum of computers and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. He should have gone home hours ago, but something in the data had caught his attention, a pattern that seemed too regular to be natural noise. The Colorado mountains surrounded the observatory like silent guardians. Through the large dome window, stars sparkled in the clear night sky. Alan had spent 15 years staring at those stars, searching for signals, for any sign that Earth wasn't alone. Or rather, for any sign that the Zelnar Empire wasn't coming back. The first contact had been devastating. What began as excitement quickly turned to horror as the aliens made their intentions clear. Earth had fought back, but the technology gap was too wide. In desperation, humanity had sent a final message, a plea for peace, a surrender. Then silence for 15 years. Most people had moved on, believing the threat had passed. Alan knew better. He leaned closer to his screen, adjusting parameters on his signal processing program. The pattern was still there, buried in the noise but unmistakable once you knew what to look for, a repeated sequence of pulses coming from the edge of the solar system. Alan reached for his phone with shaking hands and dialed his supervisor's number. "Do you know what time it is?" Dr. Howard's voice was groggy with sleep. "It's them," Alan said. "They're back." By noon the next day, the observatory was buzzing with activity. Scientists from neighboring research stations had arrived to verify Alan's findings. The government had been notified and a secure line had been established to Washington. "The signal is being picked up by observatories worldwide," said Karen Davis, an astrophysicist from Boulder. "Same pattern, same source. It's not a false alarm." Alan nodded, both validated and terrified. On the main screen, a digital representation of the signal pulsed in regular intervals. "Have we decoded it?" asked Dr. Howard. "Partially," Alan replied. "It's using a communication protocol similar to the one from 15 years ago." He tapped a few keys, and a message appeared on the screen. "We received your surrender. You won't survive what comes next." A heavy silence fell over the room. "There's more," Alan continued. "The orbital telescopes have spotted something large approaching from the outer solar system. It's slowing down, which means it's not natural. It's too big to be a ship, at least based on what we saw last time." Images from the orbital telescopes filled the screens. The object was massive, roughly the size of Earth's moon, but with an irregular shape that suggested artificial construction. 3 days later, Alan found himself in a secure government facility beneath Denver. The room was filled with military personnel, scientists, and government officials. At the head of the table sat Samantha Wells, the director of NASA, and beside her, a grim-faced man in civilian clothes who had been introduced as Jack Harding, former military strategist. "The object will reach Earth orbit in approximately 3 weeks, Samantha announced. "All attempts at communication have been met with the same message. We're operating under the assumption that this is a hostile approach." Screens around the room displayed global preparations. Military forces worldwide were on high alert. Space agencies were repurposing satellites for defense. Civilian populations were being quietly moved from coastal areas to inland shelters. "What? About evacuation?" someone asked. Jack spoke for the first time, his voice low and steady. "There is nowhere to go. Our best long-range spacecraft would take years to reach even the nearest habitable moon. We stand our ground here." Alan barely heard the discussions that followed. He was still studying the signal, running it through various filters and analysis programs on his laptop. Something wasn't right. The main message was too simple, too direct. The Zelnar communications from 15 years ago had been complex, layered with information. "There's something else in the signal," he said suddenly, interrupting a general who was discussing missile defense strategies. All eyes turned to him. "The primary message is clear, yes, but there's a secondary signal embedded within it. It's using a completely different encoding method." Alan turned his laptop around to show a complex pattern that looked nothing like the main signal. "Could it be a weapon?" Jack asked. "A virus for our systems?" I don't think so, Alan replied. It's not attempting to interface with our technology. It's just information. Complex information. It took Alan and a team of cryptographers another 2 days to decode the secondary signal. When they finally succeeded, they were left with what appeared to be technical schematics for a device of unknown purpose, along with precise geographical coordinates. This makes no sense, Samantha said, studying the schematics. Why would they send us this? The coordinates point to a location in the Mojave Desert, Jack noted. Remote, uninhabited. Could it be a trap? One of the generals asked. Alan shook his head. The secondary signal was hidden extremely well. It wasn't meant for just anyone to find, and it doesn't match the Zelnar communication patterns we've studied. It's different. Different how? Samantha asked. I can't explain it, Alan admitted. But it feels like this message wasn't sent by the Zelnar. It's like someone else is trying to contact us, someone who doesn't want the Zelnar to know they're communicating with us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We need to check those coordinates, Jack said finally. Small team, minimal footprint. We need to know what this is, before that thing reaches Earth. Samantha nodded. I'll authorize it. Dr. Miller, you'll go with the team. You understand this signal better than anyone. Alan swallowed hard, but nodded. As the meeting broke up, he found himself standing at the window looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, something was coming for Earth. Something that had warned them they wouldn't survive. But maybe, just maybe, the hidden message offered a chance. A slim hope in the face of what seemed like certain doom. As fear and determination mingled in his chest, Alan made a silent promise to the stars. This time, humanity wouldn't just surrender. This time, they would fight. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and sand. Alan stepped out, shielding his eyes from the harsh Mojave Desert sun. Behind him followed 2 strangers he had met only hours earlier at a military base. The woman, Lisa Johnson, carried a large case containing scientific equipment. She was a quantum physicist whose theories about space and time had been dismissed by most of the scientific community until now. The man, Major Peter Collins, moved with the careful precision of someone always ready for danger. His eyes constantly scanned the horizon. Are you sure these are the right coordinates? Peter asked, his voice barely audible over the sound of the helicopter blades slowing down. Alan checked the GPS device in his hand. We're exactly where the signal told us to be, but there's nothing here. They stood in an empty stretch of desert. No buildings, no landmarks, just sand and scattered rocks stretching for miles in every direction. Maybe it's underground, Lisa suggested. She put her case down and began unpacking various instruments. Let's take some readings before we decide. This is a waste of time. As Lisa set up her equipment, a 4th person emerged from the helicopter. Elaine Foster was younger than the others, with an intense focus in her eyes. She carried a backpack full of tools and electronic devices of her own design. My father worked on classified projects after the first contact, she explained when she saw Alan watching her. He died 3 years ago, but he left me his research. When the government announced the alien signal, I recognized some of the patterns. That's why they brought me along. For the next hour, the team spread out and searched the area. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Alan was beginning to think they had made a mistake when Lisa called out. I'm picking up something strange, she said, studying one of her instruments. There's an energy signature about 10 feet below us, spread out in a circular pattern about 50 yards across. Elaine joined her, pulling out a tablet computer. Let me try something. Her fingers flew across the screen as she input a series of commands. I've been studying the schematics from the signal. If I'm right about how they work. She hit a final command, and suddenly the ground beneath them began to vibrate. A few yards away, sand shifted and slid away as a metal disc about 3 feet in diameter rose to the surface. Back up, Peter warned, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. They retreated several steps as the disc fully emerged. Its surface was smooth and featureless except for a small indentation in the center. It matches the first component in the schematics, Alan said, comparing it to images on his tablet. It's some kind of base platform. So we're supposed to build something here, Lisa said, using the plans from the signal. Peter looked skeptical. Who sent these plans, and why should we trust them? Because we don't have a choice, Elaine replied simply. That thing in orbit will reach Earth in less than 3 weeks. Whatever this is, it's our best shot. They worked through the day and into the night, setting up lights as darkness fell. Military trucks arrived with crates of materials that matched the specifications in the alien schematics. Engineers and scientists joined them, working in shifts to construct what appeared to be a communication device unlike anything humans had built before. On the third day, as they assembled the final components, Elaine made a discovery. Some of these circuits, she said, showing Alan her tablet. They're similar to designs in my father's research, but he didn't create them. He was studying them. Artifacts found buried all over the world. What are you saying? Alan asked. I'm saying whoever sent us these plans has been in contact with humans before, maybe for a very long time. As night fell again, the device was complete. It stood about 7 feet tall, a complex arrangement of metal components surrounding a central crystal chamber. It hummed with energy, drawing power from the generators they had set up. Now what? Peter asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Elaine stepped forward with a small device from her backpack. My father's notes mentioned a key of some kind. I think this might be it. She placed it in a slot near the base of the machine. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal chamber began to glow with blue light. The light grew brighter, then shot upward in a narrow beam toward the night sky. The team stepped back, as the area around the device filled with shimmering particles of light. The particles swirled together, forming a humanoid shape that gradually solidified until a figure stood before them. It appeared female, with silvery skin and features that seemed almost human, but not quite. When it spoke, its voice was calm and clear. I am Sentinel 913, last observer of the Caldari network. I have waited a long time for this moment. Who are you? Alan asked. Did you send us the hidden message? Yes, the figure replied. Your world stands at the edge of extinction. The Zelnar are not what they seem. They are harvesters of worlds, collectors of species. Their arrival is not an invasion, it's an extinction event. Peter stepped forward. Why help us? Why now? Your world was once protected, the Sentinel explained. For thousands of years, a barrier shielded your solar system, maintained by devices scattered across your planet. My people placed them here long before your civilization arose. What happened? To the barrier? Lisa asked. It failed when humans unknowingly destroyed several key devices during your industrial expansion. Without the full network, the barrier weakened and finally collapsed 15 years ago. The first contact, Alan whispered. That was merely a scout, the Sentinel said. What comes now is far worse. A living planet that processes worlds for consumption. If it succeeds, the Zelnar Collective will follow, and your species will join the thousands they have already harvested. How do we stop it? Elaine asked. You have one opportunity, the Sentinel said, its eyes glowing with the same blue light as the crystal. Destroy the scout, and you may buy enough time to prepare for what follows. As the team exchanged glances, the holographic figure raised its hand. New images appeared in the air around them, schematics for weapons, defenses, and something that looked like the barrier devices mentioned earlier. The knowledge of my people is yours now, the Sentinel said. Use it well. Your time is short. The blue light flickered, and the Sentinel's form began to fade. Wait, Alan called. How do we know we can trust you? The fading figure seemed to smile. You don't. But ask yourself this. What choice do you have? Then it was gone, leaving only the machine and the new schematics floating in the air above it. In the silence that followed, they looked up at the night sky where somewhere beyond the stars their enemy was drawing closer by the minute. 1 week later, the sky turned a sickly green, People across the world stepped outside their homes and looked up in fear. The Zelnar scout had entered Earth's orbit, a massive shape that blocked out the stars at night. During the day, it cast strange shadows that moved in patterns that didn't match the sun's position. In an underground facility in Nevada, converted from an old military bunker, Alan studied the latest atmospheric readings. The numbers on his screen confirmed what everyone could feel. The air was changing. Oxygen levels are dropping by 0.03% per day, he said to Samantha, who stood behind him. And there are new compounds forming in the upper atmosphere, things we've never seen before. How long until it becomes dangerous to breathe? She asked. At this rate, maybe a month, but it could speed up. Samantha nodded, her face grim. In the week since the Zelnar scout arrived, everything had changed. Power grids had failed across entire countries. Communication systems worked only sporadically. Governments struggled to maintain order as panic spread. The door to the monitoring room slid open and Jack entered with Lisa and Peter. They had been working with military leaders to organize what resources remained. Most of the major cities are being evacuated, Jack reported. We're moving people to the safe zones, but it's slow going with the transportation systems failing. The safe zones were areas where Elaine's team had set up shield generators based on the Sentinel's technology. The shields couldn't cover large areas yet, but they could protect people from the worst effects of the changing atmosphere. What about the plan to reach the Scouts' core? Samantha asked. Peter spread a map across the table. We're gathering what aircraft we can still get flying. Most electronics don't work well anymore, but we've been able to shield some systems using the Sentinel's tech. If we can get enough planes in the air, we might be able to break through their outer defenses. Alan watched them discuss strategy, feeling oddly detached. His mind kept returning to the Sentinel's words, a living planet that processes worlds for consumption. The Scout wasn't just a ship or a weapon. It was alive in some way, adapting to Earth, changing it to suit the Zelnar. The door opened again and Elaine entered, looking exhausted but excited. She hadn't slept much in days, working constantly on understanding and applying the Sentinel's technology. I found something, she announced. She plugged a drive into the main computer and images appeared on the large screen. I've been going through my father's research, comparing it with what the Sentinel gave us. Look at this. The screen showed pictures of strange objects found at archaeological sites around the world, oddly shaped metal pieces with no clear purpose. These were discovered over the past century at digs in Egypt, China, Peru, and dozens of other locations, Elaine explained. Nobody knew what they were. My father collected data on all of them. Now I know. They're pieces of the old barrier system. The one that protected Earth before we accidentally destroyed it? Lisa asked. Yes, and here's the important part. Not all of them were destroyed, some are just dormant. Elaine pointed to a location on the map. There's an intact one here, under an old military base in North Dakota. If we can get to it and activate it using the Sentinel's instructions, we might be able to use it against the Scout. Hope flickered in the room for the first time in days. How would that work? Samantha asked. Lisa stepped forward, examining the schematics on the screen. The barrier technology creates a field that exists partly in our dimension and partly in another. If what Elaine is suggesting is possible, we could use it to disrupt the Scout structure at its core. Like a bomb? Jack asked. More like a key, Lisa said. The right key can unlock the most complex door with very little force. This could be the key to the Scout's destruction. Over the next 2 days, a team was sent to North Dakota to retrieve the dormant barrier device. They returned with a strange, triangular object about the size of a basketball. Its surface was covered with symbols similar to those in the Sentinel's schematics. Elaine and Lisa worked together to understand how to activate it, while Jack and Peter prepared for the mission to the Scout. Alan divided his time between monitoring the worsening atmospheric conditions and helping decode the symbols on the device. On the 10th day after the Scout's arrival, they gathered in the hangar of the facility. 6 aircraft stood ready, converted, military jets with special shielding to protect them from the Scout's defenses. Each had been modified to fly higher than normal, reaching the lower edge of the Scout's massive body. We've identified what we think is an entry point, Peter said, showing a 3D model of the Scout to the assembled pilots and crew. It's a gap in their outer hull that appears cyclically every 8 hours. Our window will be short, just 5 minutes to get all our aircraft inside. Once we're in, we'll need to reach the central core, Jack continued. Based on scans, we believe it's located here. He pointed to the center of the model. That's where Lisa and Elaine will deploy the barrier device. And the rest of us? Asked one of the pilots. The rest of us make sure they get there, Peter said simply. As final preparations were made, Alan found Elaine sitting alone, staring at the barrier device now fitted into a special carrying case. Do you think this will work? He asked. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but determined. The math says it should. The Sentinel's information has been correct so far, but what? There's something about this that doesn't add up. Why didn't the Sentinel tell us directly about the barrier devices still on Earth? Why lead us through this roundabout path? Alan had wondered the same thing. Maybe it couldn't, or maybe there are rules it has to follow. Either way, this is our best chance, Elaine nodded. I know, I just wish we understood more about what we're really doing. A siren sounded, signaling it was time to board the aircraft. As they walked toward the hangar, the ground suddenly shook beneath them. Dust fell from the ceiling of the facility. What was that? Alan asked. Jack came running toward them. They've started dropping something from the Scout, some kind of pods. They're hitting major cities worldwide. What's in the pods? Elaine asked. Jack's face was grim. We don't know yet, but everything organic that comes into contact with them is being transformed. The safe zones are holding for now, but we need to move up our timetable. As they reached the hangar, Lisa joined them, now dressed in a flight suit. It's happening faster than we predicted. The Scout isn't just changing our atmosphere, it's seeding Earth with Zelnar life forms. Then we go now, Peter said, already heading toward the lead aircraft. The next window opens in 40 minutes. If we leave immediately, we can make it. As the team boarded their assigned aircraft, Alan watched from the command center. The screens showed images from around the world, strange growths spreading from the points where the pods had landed, the sky growing darker with unnatural clouds, people fleeing toward the dwindling safe zones. Earth was being remade for alien life, and a small group of humans was about to attempt the impossible, to fly into the heart of the threat and somehow stop it. The hangar doors opened, revealing the sickly green sky above. One by one, the aircraft rolled out and took off, climbing steeply into the alien atmosphere. Alan watched until they disappeared from view, carrying with them what might be humanity's last hope. The 6 aircraft rose through layers of greenish clouds. The pilots fought with controls that grew sluggish as they entered the outer atmosphere. Inside the lead plane, Peter sat in the pilot's seat, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls. Behind him, Lisa and Elaine checked the barrier device one last time while Jack studied a screen showing their approach to the Scout. 2 minutes to the entry window, Jack announced. Everyone get ready. Through the cockpit window, they could now see the underside of the Zelnar Scout. It was vast beyond comprehension, stretching across the sky like a dark continent. Its surface wasn't smooth but covered with structures that looked half mechanical, half organic, like veins and muscles made of metal and strange materials. There, Peter pointed. The opening is starting to form. A section of the Scout's surface was peeling back, revealing a dark tunnel leading inside. It happened slowly, like a flower opening its petals. All aircraft follow my lead, Peter said into his radio. Tight formation, no deviations. We'll have one shot at this. The 6 planes adjusted their course, lining up behind Peter's lead aircraft. As they approached the opening, sensors in the cockpit began to wail. Energy spike, Jack warned. They know we're coming. From the surface of the Scout, objects began to detach and move toward them. They looked like birds made of metal, with wings that seemed to shift and change shape as they flew. Defensive units, Elaine said. The Sentinel warned us about these. The metal birds accelerated toward the Earth aircraft. When they were about half a mile away, they fired. Not bullets or missiles, but pulses of energy that distorted the air they passed through. Evasive maneuvers, Peter shouted into the radio, but stay on course for the opening. The plane scattered slightly, trying to avoid the energy pulses. One of the trailing aircraft took a direct hit. Its engines flared and died instantly. It began to fall, spinning toward the earth far below. Baker 6 is down, Jack reported, grimly. 5 aircraft remaining. Peter pushed his plane faster. The opening is starting to close. We need to get through now. The remaining 5 aircraft raced toward the narrowing gap in the Scout's surface. The metal birds swarmed around them, firing constantly. Another Earth plane took a hit to its wing and veered off course, barely under control. We're not going to make it, Lisa said, watching the opening shrink. Yes, we are, Peter growled. He flipped switches on his control panel, overriding safety protocols. Dumping all reserve power to engines, the plane shot forward with a surge of speed that pressed them all back into their seats. Behind them, 2 more Earth aircraft managed to match their acceleration. The other 2 couldn't keep up and fell back. 3 planes entering the Scout, Jack reported. The rest are falling back to the safe zone. They passed through the opening just as it closed behind them, cutting off the pursuing metal birds. They were inside the Zelnar Scout. The tunnel they flew through was massive, large enough for their aircraft to fly comfortably. The walls pulsed with an inner light, revealing textures that seemed both technological and alive. It's like flying through a giant organism, Lisa whispered. In a way we are, Elaine replied. Remember what the Sentinel said. The Scout is a living system. They flew deeper into the Scout, following the tunnel as it curved and branched. Peter navigated using a 3D map, created from the Sentinel's data, choosing paths that should lead them toward the central core. After 10 minutes of tense flying, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The 3 Earth aircraft slowed to a hover, their pilots staring in shock at what lay before them. The chamber was filled with transparent pods, each containing what appeared to be a human. There were thousands of them, arranged in neat rows that stretched as far as they could see. Are those people? Lisa asked, horror in her voice. Jack used the plane's sensors to scan the nearest pods. They're alive, but in some kind of stasis. They must have been taken from Earth's surface when the pods landed. They're being studied, Elaine realized. The Zelnar are analyzing human biology. Before they could discuss further, the chamber shuddered. From openings in the walls, more metal creatures appeared, not birds this time, but larger forms that resembled insects with too many limbs. They've found us, Peter warned. We need to move. He turned the aircraft toward a tunnel on the far side of the chamber, but a swarm of the insect-like defenders blocked their path. The other 2 Earth planes moved to engage them, firing their weapons. Go, the pilot of one plane radioed. We'll hold them off. Get to the core. Peter hesitated for only a second, then nodded. Thank you. Your sacrifice won't be forgotten. He guided their plane into a steep dive, aiming for a smaller tunnel below the main one. The 2 other Earth aircraft fought desperately against the swarm, creating the distraction they needed. As they entered the new tunnel, an explosion rocked the chamber behind them. One of the Earth planes had been destroyed. Baker 3 is gone, Jack said quietly. They flew in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. The tunnel twisted and descended deeper into the Scout. The walls here pulsed faster, suggesting they were approaching something important. Suddenly, the plane shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. We're losing power, Peter announced. Something is interfering with our systems. The aircraft dropped lower, its engines sputtering. Peter fought with the controls, trying to maintain a glide path. There, Elaine pointed ahead. The tunnel opens into another chamber. Try to reach it. Peter nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he coaxed the failing aircraft forward. They cleared the tunnel's end and entered a new space, smaller than the pod chamber, but still vast. The plane's engines gave one final surge, then died completely. Brace for impact, Peter shouted. The aircraft hit the chamber floor and skidded forward, metal screeching against metal. It spun halfway around before, coming to a stop near the center of the chamber. For a moment, everyone was still. Then Jack's voice. Everyone okay? There were groans and confirmations as they checked themselves for injuries. Peter had taken the worst of it, A gash on his forehead bled freely, and he winced as he unbuckled his harness. "I think my leg is broken," he said, his voice tight with pain. Lisa helped him out of the pilot's seat while Elaine and Jack gathered their equipment. The barrier device was secure in its case, undamaged by the crash. "Where are we?" Lisa asked, looking around the chamber as they exited the damaged aircraft. The space was filled with machinery unlike anything they had seen before. Pillars of pulsing light connected the floor to the ceiling. Between them, strange consoles and structures that defied easy description hummed with energy. Some kind of processing center, Elaine guessed. But processing what? Jack checked a handheld device, linked to the Sentinel's data. "We're close to the core, very close." Peter leaned against the aircraft, unable to put weight on his injured leg. His face was pale from pain and blood loss. "I can't go any further," he admitted. "You three need to go on without me." "We can't just leave you," Lisa protested. Peter shook his head. "You have to. The mission is all that matters now." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "Take this. It's a detonator for the charges we placed on the aircraft. If things go wrong, if you can't activate the barrier device, this is our backup plan." Jack took the detonator, his expression solemn. "We'll come back for you." Peter gave a weak smile. "We both know that's not likely. Now go. Save what's left of our world." With reluctance, they left Peter beside the crashed aircraft and made their way deeper into the chamber, toward what they hoped was the heart of the Zelnar Scout, and their one chance to stop it. Lisa, Jack, and Elaine moved cautiously through the strange machinery of the processing center. The air felt thick and had an odd smell, like ozone and something organic. The lights pulsed around them in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Core should be through there," Jack said, pointing to an archway of swirling energy at the far end of the chamber. As they approached, the floor trembled beneath their feet. The vibrations came in regular intervals, like giant footsteps. "Something's coming," Elaine whispered. They ducked behind a large console just as a massive figure entered the processing center. It moved on 6 legs and stood 3 times taller than a human. Its body was a mix of metal and what looked like muscle tissue. Where a head should be, there was a cluster of sensory organs that rotated constantly, scanning the room. "A worker unit," Lisa guessed. "It's maintaining the systems." They watched as it moved from console to console, adjusting settings with limbs that changed shape to fit each task. After what seemed like an eternity, it finished its work and left through another passage. "Now's our chance," Jack said. "Let's go." They hurried to the energy archway. Standing before it, they could feel heat radiating from the swirling patterns. "The barrier device should protect us as we pass through," Elaine said, checking the settings on the case she carried. "But we'll only have about 20 minutes before its shielding depletes." Lisa nodded. "Then we go now." Together they stepped through the archway. The energy swirled around them, making their skin tingle and their vision blur. For a moment, Lisa feared the device's protection had failed. Then they were through, standing in a space unlike anything they had seen before. The core of the Zelnar Scout was a vast spherical chamber. At its center floated a massive orb of shifting light and tissue, pulsing with energy. Tendrils extended from it in all directions, connecting to the walls of the chamber. "The neural cluster," Elaine breathed. "The Scout's brain." As they stood there, a voice spoke in their minds. It wasn't sound but pure thought, translated somehow into words they could understand. "Visitors," it said. How unexpected. They froze, looking at each other to confirm they had all heard it. "Yes, I speak to all of you," the voice continued. "You are the first species to reach this far in many cycles. Most simply accept their fate." "We're not here to accept anything," Jack said firmly. "We're here to stop you." A sensation like laughter filled their minds. "Stop us with what? That primitive device you carry?" Elaine clutched the case containing the barrier device tighter. "You know what this is?" "Of course. The Sentinels and their barriers. An old annoyance, but never a true threat. They merely delay the inevitable." Lisa stepped forward. Why are you doing this? Why destroy our world? Destroy? No. Transform, preserve, catalog. Your species has qualities worth adding to the collective. Those deemed suitable will continue in a new form. Images filled their minds. Humans changed into creatures like the worker they had seen, their consciousness preserved but repurposed to serve the Zelnar. Other humans stored as pure information, their memories and genetic code archived for study. This is your purpose? Lisa asked. To collect species? We are the keepers of life, the neural cluster replied. Across countless worlds, we have preserved what would otherwise be lost to time. Your kind is unusual. Most species surrender without resistance when warned. You were told you would not survive, yet you fight. While the neural cluster spoke, Jack had been slowly moving to one side of the chamber, looking for weaknesses. Elaine carefully opened the case containing the barrier device. And now you bring a sentinel tool to our heart, the voice said, a new edge to it. Did the sentinel not tell you what would happen? Tendrils of energy began to detach from the walls, moving toward them. The air grew heavy with electricity. Now! Jack shouted. Elaine activated the barrier device. It rose from its case, floating in the air before them. Symbols on its surface glowed with blue light. A field of energy expanded around it, pushing back the approaching tendrils. Set it down and back away, Elaine instructed. It needs to establish contact with the neural cluster. They retreated as the device floated toward the center of the chamber. The neural cluster's tendrils reached for it, trying to stop it but unable to penetrate the energy field. Suddenly, their communication devices activated. Alan's voice came through, breaking and staticky but audible. Team, are you there? Can you hear me? We're here, Lisa replied. We've reached the core and deployed the device. Listen carefully, Alan said urgently. I've decoded more of the Sentinel's message. There's something you need to know. The device won't just destroy the scout. It's going to create a chain reaction that will consume much of Earth as well. The three of them looked at each other in horror. What do you mean? Jack demanded. The device is creating a link between the scout and the remnants of the barrier network on Earth, Alan explained. When it activates fully, it will draw power from both to restore the barrier. The process will destroy the scout, but the energy release will devastate large portions of Earth's surface. The Sentinel didn't give us a weapon, Lisa realized aloud. It gave us a choice. The barrier device had nearly reached the neural cluster now. Its blue glow intensified, beginning to match the pulsing rhythm of the cluster itself. Can we stop it? Elaine asked. No, Alan replied. But you can control it. The device has a guidance system. You can direct where the worst of the energy discharge will hit Earth. Jack pulled up a map on his device. Most of the world's population is in the safe zones now. If we direct the discharge to hit the uninhabited areas, we'll still lose nearly 40% of the planet's surface, Lisa said quietly. But humanity will survive, Elaine finished. The barrier device touched the neural cluster. Both began to glow brighter, their energies mingling. The walls of the chamber trembled. Your choice matters little. The neural cluster's voice came, again now sounding strained. The collective will notice the scout's destruction. They will come. But we'll be ready, Jack said firmly. The barrier will be restored. It won't hold forever, the neural cluster warned. Nothing does. It doesn't need to be forever, Lisa replied. Just long enough for us to prepare. The glow from the device and cluster intensified until it was painful to look at. The chamber walls began to crack, white light pouring through. We need to get out of here, Jack shouted over the growing roar of energy. They ran back toward the archway, the chamber collapsing behind them. As they reached the processing center, they found Peter waiting, supported by the pilot of the last Earth aircraft. They had found another entrance to the chamber. The plane is ready, the pilot said, but we need to hurry. Together, they made their way to where the aircraft waited. As they strapped in, the entire scout began to shake violently. The reaction has started, Elaine said. We have minutes at most. The pilot gunned the engines, flying through tunnels that were already beginning. to collapse. Behind them, the core of the Scout was transforming into pure energy, the barrier device channeling it through the ancient network. They barely cleared the Scout as it began to disintegrate. The sky around them filled with blue light as the energy of the Scout was drawn into the forming barrier. Below, they could see portions of Earth's surface glowing with the same light as the dormant barrier devices activated, connecting to form a network once more. 3 months later, Alan stood with Samantha on a hill overlooking one of the new boundary zones. Before them stretched a wasteland. What had once been forest now transformed into a strange crystalline landscape. It marked the edge of the areas affected by the energy discharge. "The barrier is holding," Alan said, looking up at the sky where a subtle aurora was visible even in daylight. No sign of Zelnar activity. "How long will it last?" Samantha asked. "Elaine thinks decades, maybe centuries. Long enough for us to prepare to build on what we've learned from the Sentinel's technology." In camps and cities around the world, humanity was rebuilding. The safe zones had expanded as the air cleared. The shield generators now protected new settlements at the edges of the habitable areas. Alan's communicator beeped. It was Lisa, calling from the research center they had established in the old Nevada facility. "We've decoded another portion of the Sentinel's data," she said, excitement in her voice. "There are other races out there, Alan. Other species who fought the Zelnar and survived. And now we know how to contact them." As Alan looked up at the shimmering barrier that surrounded the Earth, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. The warning had come true. They hadn't survived unchanged. Parts of their world were lost forever. But humanity had endured. And when the Zelnar returned, they would find not a helpless planet, but a world prepared to defend itself. On a memorial in what remained of Washington, D.C., Jack had placed a plaque with words that were now repeated across the surviving nations. "We survived what came. You won't survive what we've become."